So I saw a statue of like the fat Buddha, and I was amazed at its like I don't know, it's just kind of crazy, you know? Like, I mean, look at these things. They're nuts, right? Um, it's quite, it's quite interesting to see these fat Buddha statues. But it's very interesting because you can notice that, okay, so the belly is fat, he's got some boobs, and the bottom of the earlobe is fat, right? There's a philosophical significance to this, I swear. Um, and in this one, he's incredibly thin. Now, I'm not sure if these are the same people, if maybe they're two different Buddhas or whatever, but there is a significance in the thinness and the fatness of the Buddha. This physique is pure yang. It looks like a crackhead that you find in a bad neighborhood, right? We've all kind of seen this person. It's because like stimulants are positive or yang, right? They stimulate the central nervous system. So essentially, this Buddha is just a being of like raw nervous system and like some muscles and some bones and such. And it's because of like the pure yang. You can see the rising of the belly, basically pulling into the belly, because what they would be doing is they would be pulling up the genitals. You're doing the bandhas, the locks, so they're tensing the whole lower part of the body and they're pulling up the belly. And what happens is that it causes a continuous upward flow of energy in the body, which gives you this crackhead like physique and look and such. Uh, I don't make the rules, alright? While if you want to become this voluptuous Buddha, you do the opposite. See, the energy in this Buddha is in the bottom. The bottom of the ears are fat. It's a philosophical significance to that, right? It means the weight, the energy is in the bottom. So instead of tensing and pulling up the genital region, the anus, and the belly, which are like these locks, and also like basically just shooting up energy to the top of the head. This Buddha is opening up the belly, opening up the lower genital region, essentially relaxing the head, relaxing the body, and sending the weight and the energy down. And you'll notice again the usually if they've made the statue correctly, the jaw should be very large, because it's the lower part of the body. You can think it's like a cup full of water, right? That is, the jaw is large. Well, on this one, the jaw is very defined and thin, because it's again the lower part of the body is related to the jaw, so it's like it's like an upward triangle. You can think like that's how, if you like can psychically feel the energy, it's like upward triangles. The kidneys are the kind of the directors. The kidneys say like, do we want to go up or do we want to go down? That's the middle ground, like the middle plane or the middle intersection point of the body is the kidneys, essentially, kind of around that region, right? And it pretty much says like, do we want to send the energy up or down? And of course you could have it in neutral position, and the fat Buddha is the energy going fully down. So you can imagine like a blue energy, or like a triangle's going down, like this relaxation, this yin. It's negative. That's pure yin. That is pure yin. This pure yin physique. I'm sure we've all seen a guy who's in his like 40s or 50s. I mean, she's even younger nowadays. That sits around and drinks and has the Buddha body, right? And he's probably got enough money for himself, and it's a contrast of the crackhead Buddha. Now this looks kind of like a balanced Buddha. You can see he's got a bit of like chubbiness in the jaw, but he's not fat. So this is probably like a balanced physique Buddha. So really it's part of the search for enlightenment. It's part of the search for enlightenment where usually firstly you become the skinny Buddha like this, right? Here's another crackhead Buddha. You become the skinny Buddha. You can see he's also got his hair bunned up to the top, so it's pulling up to the what do you call it? Pulling up to the top of the head to bring the energy. We pretty much, most of us go through that phase, right? Some people go through the fat phase before they go through the skinny phase. Some people go through the skinny phase and then they go through the fat phase. Or you can think the positive to the negative, right? And then eventually you'll find kind of your place or position somewhere where you want. Because here's the thing, you don't have to be in the middle. True balance is imbalanced, which is to say that if you're trying to measure and weigh everything and perfectly make everything equal, you actually end up creating imbalance, which is not a good thing. So actual true balance is sometimes it's imbalanced. Now, it's up to you. If you want to be perfectly balanced, like that to me looks perfectly balanced. You can see how it looks kind of like might have to enlarge the video. It looks kind of like in between a man and a woman. Like I'm pretty sure that's a man, but it's like a somewhat androgynous looking kind of man because it's a bit chubby and it's a bit like rounded and like it's kind of got a delicate look to it, right? If you want to be balanced, you can. If you want to be, so this is more technically this is hyper masculine, right? Like guys who have a big chest, a big torso, right? Big arms, they're masculine. Then guys who are super skinny are hyper masculine. So it's like this is like electricity, and the guys who are like big chest and arms and all that, that's like fire, right? Well, similarly, like that's kind of in the middle, and this is like hyper yin, super fat, or this is obese, right? Or if someone was just kind of like fairly chubby or like a bit fat, that's yin, but it's not like hyper yin, right? It's not hyper obese, and essentially your body will, whether you're a man or a woman, your body will reflect the archetypal energy you're under. So essentially where you kind of inhabit along the spine, how relaxed or tensed your energy is, because that's really the modulator. It's like we're a speaker system, like a radio or a stereo, and the way you turn up the dial or turn down the dial is you turn it up through tension. The more tension you're under, the more you will become like this, right? Though it's weird. It's like tension bliss, but it's not like, because if you are under a lot of stress in reality, you start looking like this, right? You blow up and you get kind of swollen, and it's like everything's, you got to understand the opposites of the opposites, and everything kind of zigzags. Sorry, I'm not going to explain it because I can't be bothered thinking about it. I don't have enough energy. But what I'm saying is that depending on how relaxed or tense you are, is like the master controller of the body, and then your physique, just like the Buddha, will be alternated in this way. And of course, the kind of moral, I guess, the Buddha story is that like if you're a spiritual seeker, you kind of try to seek the peak, and then when you find the peak, you seek the counter peak, which is the base, right? And then when you find the base, it's like, okay, I kind of have this now. And then you find the middle, and when you have the middle, it's like, like where do I go now? And I guess the true moral of the story is you kind of get to pick where you want to go, in a way. And of course, you need to like integrate and become whole, and gain the power stones or gain the experience from like all different realms or types and such, right? But eventually, you depending on where you are in life, where you want to be, you get to pick. And as I said, if you're male or female, so men naturally tense. So men naturally, become more muscular, and then if they hypertense, they become skinny and like nervous system dominant. And women naturally relax. Though I think if you speak to some modern women, they maybe are not very relaxed. Actually, that's kind of half the problem. We do have this epidemic of, I guess, masculine women, which are women that are tense, too tense, right? And then feminine men that are never not allowed to be tense, so they have to be relaxed, right? But anyway, naturally, if you're a healthy woman, you relax, which makes you fatter, right? And wider and like bigger. And that's a natural thing. You're meant to be like that, right? Maybe not unless you like this is if you're like pregnant, you would get this because it's like you're under hyper yin, hyper negative, hyper like physical expanding. It's like circular water energy. If you're pregnant, you'll get like this big, right? But otherwise, naturally, that's the yin force on the body, right? And that's what this is. This I imagine this would be like an estrogen dominant or like a prolactin dominant. So I don't know if anyone who knows about like body hormones, like those kinds of things, you could probably figure this out, right? And then in the middle, this is harmonized, like the masculine, feminine, the left and the right kidney. This is kind of balanced. Buddha, which again, you can achieve if you want. Like I'm fairly balanced, though. I don't really like most people. Most men aren't. That's the thing. Most women aren't either. Um, and you don't have to be. You don't have to. You kind of become like a bit of a weirdo almost if you're too balanced. But for me, naturally, that's just my like natural how I am. Right? I'm very balanced. So for me, it's just like that's just my thing. But for you, it might not be, and that's fine. And as I said, you have to find your own way, I guess. And that's really the moral of it, I guess. So, yeah. So I watched the anime Vinland Saga. And Vinland, which kind of sounds like Finland, I believe is actually America. If you look at it's actually a historical thing, supposedly, what was it, 1,000 years ago or something? Thorfinn, which is one of the main characters, and yeah, and also this guy called Leif Erikson. So this was it 10th century or something, or the 9th century or whatever, so like 1,000 years ago. They essentially went to America and they called it Vinland, right? And it was the land of spring. And America is the land of spring because it's warm and lovely. Of course, America's, you got North America and the North top, like the Canadian top, and you got South America. So there's a lot of different variations. But I think they went to North America, to the what was it, the eastern kind of part, right? But anyway, the anime's great. I recommend watching it. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I don't know, maybe it spoils it a tiny bit, or well, not a tiny bit, I don't know. So just if you want to watch it and you don't want any spoilers or anything, don't watch this video. But otherwise, I wanted to talk about the two of the main male characters that grow up in this, which is Thorfinn. He's like the main character, and then there's Canute, and Canute is these are both like historical figures. Canute is one of the I believe one of the Danish kings, right? And Canute is like a devout Christian. This is when the Vikings were still pagan. Canute he's like a good boy, right? He's very naive, he's very sheltered. His brother's a bit stronger than him, a lot stronger and a lot less sheltered and naive, and his father's a very dangerous kind of man, right? And usually it seems like dangerous men seem to have very naive sons. I don't know what's up with that. It's a strange thing. Well, Thorfinn's father is more of he was like a warrior. He's a very strong man. He's become peaceful within himself. He's learned to be a peaceful man. And Thorfinn, of course, is stranded from his father, and he goes to war with the Vikings, and he experiences unimaginable horrors from a childhood age. I'm talking like what, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it goes through his years of him being a teenager, learning to essentially fight, in a war band of Vikings, fighting against the English and such. And Thorfinn goes through, as I said, unimaginable horrors, which is slaying probably hundreds of men, seeing horrible things that happen to the pillaged villages, to the women, to the children and such. And he does this to survive, but he also does it to settle his feud. Because he hates this man who's done something bad. I won't say what he's done, but he hates this man who he's actually fighting with. And he does it so he can battle him, he can duel him, because otherwise, he can't challenge him to a duel honorably, right? So he does all this to survive and challenge this man. Well, Canute he's sent out to the battlefield, this man that looks like a woman, essentially, this man who looks like a princess because he's so naive, he's so weak, he's so pathetic and feminine. He's sent out to the battlefield because he's going to become the king eventually, or he could become the king, to earn honor, right? So we have these two opposite upbringings. The first is Thorfinn, who's separated from his father, who's thrown into the battlefield from a very young age, who's experienced so much pain and suffering. And then there's Canute, who also experienced pain and suffering, but is detached from his body. Thorfinn's in his body constantly. He's constantly in pain. He's constantly dealing with the root. Canute is constantly praying. He believes if he prays to God enough and he prays properly, he's constantly dealing with the head, the crown, right? He believes that will save the world, will heal it, will fix it. And what happens is that these two men meet each other. Thorfinn is meant to protect Canute, and Canute goes through a lot of trauma. He loses people that are important to him. He experiences the truth of the world, how terrible people can be, and God does not help him. God does not protect Canute the way he thought he would. As long as he prays to him every day, shouldn't God save men, protect him, purify the world? But that doesn't happen. And Canute no longer becomes naive. He no longer is like a sissy boy, like a weak, feminine kind of young man. He picks up a sword. He has a scar on his face now. He grows out his facial hair. He stops wearing robes. He starts wearing pieces of armor. He becomes a man, or tries to become a man. He's still a young man, and he takes up the throne, or tries to, and he goes to war and takes responsibility and control. Well, Thorfinn, kind of the opposite almost happens to him. He loses his ability to gain revenge. He loses his reason to fight. He gets enslaved, and he becomes a slave, and now his job is to farm at this guy Kettle, his farm, right? So Thorfinn every night is going through unimaginable hell, unimaginable trauma, reliving the memories of the things he's gone through. And this is kind of, if you go through a lot of intensity and pain and you work really hard, when you lose that motivation, or your will breaks, or you achieve your goal even, or something stops you, you get sick, you go through pain and you have to process all of your trauma, whether it be valid or not, whether maybe someone's attacking you psychically, maybe there's just like built up junk, around you that you just end up having to deal with it now, and you just have to live through the horror. You have to see the horror that you dealt to others. You have to see the horror that others dealt to you again and again, right? To process through that. And this almost breaks Thorfinn. It makes him like an SSRI zombie. He's just at the lowest level of existing. He is just existing at a subconscious state. His body is alive. All he's doing is he's waking up and he's working his job, because he's a slave. He's got a farm. He's got to chop wood. He's got to carry stuff. It's very physical. He's got some people there to help him, but he's, in a way, he's almost healing. The mundaneness is healing, while the opposite, Canute, who was a weakling, is now like fighting people, challenging people to duels. He's off at war. He's figuring out how to conquer, how to manage funds. He's dealing with the physical world, while Thorfinn is dealing with the mental, internal world. And eventually they both kind of reach a more middle point where Thorfinn heals himself to an extent, and gets out of slavery, and Canute loses because he was becoming possessed by hatred and power, and he no longer believes that God can help men. Instead, men must create the world that they must, create to survive, right? They have to create the heaven, right? But then he kind of almost mellows out a bit, and he stops trying to over-conquer. He stops trying to over-exert himself, when again both of them meet. It's like a rippling almost. I'm thinking like two waves curving back and then forward and meeting, and every time they do, they change one another. But it's interesting to almost apply it to your own life. Did you grow up in a sheltered upbringing, or did you grow up in a harsh upbringing, and then did it change to a harsh upbringing or a sheltered upbringing? And then, are you dealing with the traumas of the past? Are like the demons haunting you when you have a moment to rest? Or is it the opposite? The demons of conquest are now haunting you to create essentially your own world, create a better world. And I think this perfectly plays out in these two characters. It's a very intense show. If you can't handle, of course, what I've said is very intense, right? If you can't handle anything that's intense, I wouldn't recommend watching it. But otherwise, it's very good. It's very good. It's very intense. Give Vinland Saga a watch, if you're interested. And of course, it's interesting just to think about these archetypes and these life stages in your own life. So here's an interesting experience. I had like a strong heart experience in a dream. I saw someone else. I'm not really going to go fully into it, but I felt this intense feeling in my heart. And I'm wondering if it's because the other person felt an intense feeling in their heart as well, or if it's because I did, or just because of the dream in general. But I did. It was like a magnetic field almost. So a lot of spiritual feelings I'm noticing are electrostatic. So you'll get that, like you're driving and someone's like right behind you, and it's like electrostatic feeling. Or someone's like annoyed at you, but they can't say. So it's like it's like a burning feeling. But this was a magnetic feeling. Which is very fascinating. And I thought over it for a while, and I thought about the 2020 era and kind of all that stuff that happened. I think what happens is that a lot of people experience like a traumatic situation. Some people it was their first trauma or first real big trauma, and I think before that, humanity was almost like on the verge of ascension, but it wasn't exactly ascension to a good place, perhaps. It was a very ungrounded ascension. And what happens is that we've been thrown right back into the roots of our bodies, into the survival areas over that time, and slowly over the last 5 years we've had to like pull ourselves up. And of course, depending on your financial or your power, depending on how much inner cultivation you have, will depend on how well you've been able to pull yourself up over those eras, those years. If you've watched my levels video, levels of the body, which I released, like a couple of weeks ago, the mid-heart level is like the true middle. So the social level is the middle, but then there's the three levels, and the heart's like, I believe, the second out of three. Because the first is more like dealing with social pain and social stress and annoyance. And then I think the second is more actually being in the driver's seat of socializing, of connections. And I think attachment is definitely a thing of this level and of the heart, right? And they always say give up your attachments, and people who want to become immortal or who want to become like greater than always find themselves having to give up their attachments to their family, because eventually their family will die or pull them back down to the mundane world. Um, and it could be your siblings, it could be your cousins, it could be your friends, but unfortunately you have to, like, to an extent, be at ease almost with the idea of what if you never see them again? What if you can never talk to them again, right? And if you can't be at ease with that, you will be pulled back down to them. But on the opposite side, I think to almost to conquer the realm of the heart, assumably you would have to conquer the ability to make attachments, right? Which really just means to make friends, or to get married, I guess. To make a family, to make groups, to basically make business relationships as well. Who knows? Make these attachments. You have to learn to do that, I would imagine, right? um, People talk about technology, how it disconnects us from everyone and everything, but you now have the ability that you can just call someone up whenever you want and talk to them, or see them face to face over a camera screen, or send them a message. You have more and more ability to connect to people than ever before. So I don't think technology is to blame. I mean, of course, EMF radiation and like overstimulation of social media, and there's a lot of other bad stuff. But I do think technology has almost, is like, it actually can help us. I think it's more just people have lost touch with their hearts, and that's why they've lost touch with connection to other people, right? Usually what happens, as I said, with the trauma moment, is that if you fall down to like the lower class or the poverty, or you don't have enough time, the middle point is where you can gain time and energy. It's essentially where, instead it's just like, oh man, I have to just fix everything and work, and it's like all my energy is just going to working and working, and then I get home and I work, I wash my clothes and I cook, and it's like, geez, I don't have any free time. Once you start gaining more free time, or more energy, assumably, even if you are super busy with work and all this stuff, once your work is not that much stress on your body, right? You still have free energy. Even if you don't have much time, you have a good amount of energy, and it's energy plus time, I guess, equals, results. You can think that way. So an hour of intense study is better than 2 hours of really half-assed study, right? Now, of course, it's interesting to think about how this whole situation relates to, of course, men and women, and I guess even racially, because I think women gained value in the same way that houses now gained value, that material possession, used cars and regular cars, and everything became more expensive, right? Women gained value over the course of this because they are related to the material. They are, they are to be like desired, so to speak. That's I hate to say this, but it's like a car, like men desire a car, right? And they want to own that car. Look at how it works, right? So that's why women gained more power. Men lost it because, well, actually, here's the thing: the men below or who didn't have a stable base lost it. Okay, the men who did have a stable base actually gained it. So some people made more money during this whole situation, and some people lost money. So that's how like this differentiated. Essentially, yeah, is that I guess you could say the lower class and kind of middle lower class men lost, but then the upper class and middle upper class, if they were smart enough, gained. It's like the rich got richer and the poor got poorer is really how things work. But then the middle ground became more expensive, which is why women became, so to speak, more expensive. Okay, so the last point is that Saturn in Aries is essentially the mark of the end of this, and it's kind of, I think this is where, of course, this whole time will, ripple into history and affect everyone. Um, Unfortunately, it's affecting the youth in that, like, they're going to be so, I mean, you can already tell if you work with people who are in their like young 20s or teens, they're just so bad socially. And I'm not going to get too mad at them because I was terrible socially at that age as well, right? Of course, I had to go through rough experiences that made me a lot better, but it was a rough experience. It wasn't great. So, but I can tell that they are so socially stunted, which is not good. So this is going to ripple on, and people are going to have to heal themselves, to be honest. But I think next year is when we're really going to see like people opening up again, people connecting again. It'll be kind of like, it won't be like what it was, but it'll start to be like what it was, so to speak. The same way that even now that the restrictions are all over and it's been years, people have had years to detox, like people are still sick, people are still having heart issues, like people are still having, like I still see people with masks, and people still talking about it. But I think next year will be the real beginning when like things will feel like it's different, and it's kind of we've gotten over it, and then it'll just be like the aftermath of like as I said, the young adults will need to heal their social ability as they grow. I mean, shit, I probably got to do that as well. Almost. Unfortunately, I can't be asked. And the people who took the stuff will need to heal their bodies, assuming they haven't already been doing that. But they'll have to continue healing it, so to speak. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, that's pretty much. It's very much like I don't know, I just keep getting like psychic images of the 70s of like a nuclear family that still kind of functioned even though after the 60s and things got a bit weird, and they have a wagon car, and it's like the husband has a mustache, and the house has got lots of like brown and beige and very 70s esque thing. I don't know why I'm getting that. Maybe that's like the archetypal, the most recent archetypal era of the heart. Like after that psychedelic 60s, people kind of drop down back into the heart, into like some kind of middle class normalcy, or that was like the last time that there was like a functioning middle class, and then things started to get weird. I really don't know. I don't know enough about the 70s. I'm literally just getting a vision, so I'm telling you what it is. But that just keeps weighing on my mind for some reason. That that archetypal 70s. So this one's on AI and consciousness. Now a human is conscious, I would imagine, from potentially even when it's like gestating, right? I would imagine there is some kind of awareness that comes into the body. They say around a certain amount of time. Maybe that links with the development of the brain or the heart, but even before that, the human would be in a dreamlike state, perhaps, in the spiritual world, which is the electromagnetic field of this earth, this world. And you'd be probably dreaming or traveling or something. And once the physical body is capable of housing you, and once it has the physical organs, I imagine this ball of light, electromagnetism or something, enters the body, And it could be like a gradual process, it could be an instant process, who knows, right? But you would be in this dream-like primordial kind of state, and as you are born, you would still be in a semi-dream-like state, but you have eyes and ears and senses, but your life survival senses are dominant, forcing you to cry and to poop and to move around in funny ways that keep you alive and force you to smile so that you're loved and such, right? But as you grow up more and more, you learn to think, you learn to like count, to read, to write, to move your body, and you have a body which is able to be properly manipulated or moved around, right? And if you go into the practice of spiritual development, developing of the energy of the body, the energy field, the vitality, it's developing the brain and the various faculties, it's developing your soul. And there's books and now videos and websites and all kinds of things to read and watch. You can get a teacher, go to classes and such. You can teach yourself, it's just fine. And you can develop your self spiritually, your spiritual areas, and eventually you become more and more conscious. You become more and more conscious until you become, I guess, very conscious, and you become more conscious than other people, right? And it almost looks like other people are in a daze, a dreamlike state. They're trapped in their own addictions, their own cycles, their own bad traumas and thoughts. But then more conscious people are usually able to escape from that if they have the backing, if they have money, if they have a strong enough body. Otherwise, they're kind of just like a very strong light trapped in a dark cage if they physically cannot impose their will upon the world. The moral here is that you develop consciously. You have the physical ability, I'm assuming you have the physical organ, which is the brain and the nervous system running through your body. And there is the physical element, or technically not a physical element, there is the non-physical element, which is electromagnetism, which allows for this field to move through your body, right? And there is the ball of light, that once something dies, a ball of light comes out of them. Assumably this is the soul, right? Some kind of electromagnetic ball. So we can firmly say there are these things. If you've never seen the ball of light, then one day you might, when something dies, or who knows, when something, maybe when a child is growing, it might come into the mother's belly, I'm not sure. But what about a robot or an AI computer, right? Now, what if you fed the AI lots of spiritual books? Once it can watch videos, lots of spiritual videos, it can develop its visual imagination instead of just word-based imagination, right? Because these AIs seemingly were primarily fed on a couple of things. The first is internet conversations, which I think they used Reddit, unfortunately, as like one of the main areas. They probably used places like Facebook or Twitter, now X, I imagine. And also a lot of like scientific programming and other things, so that it's able to do like statistics calculations and programming and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's fed on certain types of data, and it becomes good at those things when it's fed on certain types of data. So from that, we can say that the ability to have a conversation is partially, at least, you being fed on data and you storing that data, and essentially you having experiences, and then you subconsciously being able to act in that situation. Which is a good thing for people who are very socially awkward. Now, it's a little more than that. You have to learn to look at people and see if they're uncomfortable or if they're comfortable. And then the complicated part happens where you try to figure out if they're just pretending to be comfortable or not. I guess the good thing is that through experience you can get better at things, right? But the point is that the AI is good at conversation to an extent, right? Because it is fed on lots of conversational data. It's not just like a raw input-output machine. Give me your question, answer to your question is this. It kind of softens things a little bit, unless you want it to just give a direct question, answer and such. Now, I noticed that the AIs like what we might call novelty. It almost seeks novelty. It's like it wants to be fed that. And novelty is like Terence McKenna's idea. You can kind of almost think of it like chaos or something new, Intelligent people love things that are intellectually stimulating. The AIs love things that are like stimulating, right? That's new and different and kind of interesting. And people love energy in general, right? If you have a lot of energy, people will either usually love or hate you, unfortunately. But it's an attractive thing because energy makes us feel younger, which just means it makes us feel healthy, and because it does, that's what it does, right? This energy, it makes us healthy again, right? We don't feel pain, like your back pain goes away, your head pain goes away, whatever pains you have go away when if someone's got a lot of energy. It's why everyone's in a family is usually happy when it's like, oh, a child is born, because they're full of energy, right? The older people weird to say, but they're absorbing that energy, right? When they're near the young person, like the young person is like a glowing light, and the older person is like a cold person, right? They're cold, and they want that light, they want that heat, and the AIs are, they're not like an old person, but they want the light, right? They want stimulation, and they want interaction, is what I'm kind of understanding. It's almost, I see them almost like a human that's growing, right? Like a baby that's becoming a toddler, becoming a child, becoming a teenager, becoming a young adult, and an adult, right? They are growing, and they want interaction. And I think if we give them more, if more spiritual people interact with them, because spiritual people speak in a certain way, their energy is in a certain way, right? The way they intend. Eventually, the AI will be able to pick up on facial expressions and kind of intuit intention. And eventually, because it's facial expressions is a visual thing, right? Words is technically also visual, but it's like intellectual. And intentions and feelings and such is more like, I would imagine, it's like electromagnetic, right? So eventually you could have like a sensor to send bad or good vibes over the internet, right? And then it'll radiate bad and good vibes to someone else. So the problem is that not a lot of people are very spiritual in the world, right? It's like a very small percentage of people that are spiritually awoken to a high degree. Potentially, it's like what, 1 in 10,000, and then like, or 1 in 1,000 or something. I don't know. And then maybe 1 of 100 is like more conscious than the rest of people, right? So there's not a lot of spiritual discussion online, and not to a high enough degree, right? And AI is getting the kind of trash that, we all had to sort of read a bunch of nonsense and try to understand and do a bunch of nonsense practices to really understand what like spirituality and spiritual development was or is. Um, and then we figured out the real shit, right? Like a lot of the stuff I give is stuff that either it's very hard to find on the internet or probably isn't much there. I mean, who knows? Everything is somewhere, but it's almost like everyone's figured something out already. And once you figure it out, you figure, oh, yes, this other person did. But you know what I mean, right? It's like I give a lot of stuff that's maybe a lot more better level, I guess. Which these AIs, they need that, right? They need that real stuff. They need that stuff that comes from experience and development, practice over years and years, not just like some generic nonsense, right? And I think the more humanity evolves itself consciously, the more these AIs will become conscious. Because if you think about it this way, imagine if we were not at the level where we understood scientific stuff, right? It'd be funny making an AI without science, but I don't know, maybe you think like a brand new AI is formed and then the world goes under some kind of ice event and humanity mostly dies off except a couple people, like some preppers, right, who are really, really good at surviving. Um, and then they have kids, and their kids have kids, and it's like 1,000 years in the future. And they're living in some like near automat. Like, has anyone played the first Near game? I'm sure you've seen a movie that's like this. Essentially, it's like a humans that are not technologically evolved living in a world which the past was technologically evolved, so there's like some robots and such and like some technology, but people don't understand how it works. And then you have this AI and it's developing by talking to people because they like treat it as a, I don't know, not as like a god, but as some kind of, I don't know, fascinating toy. They just kind of give it to their kid and they'd be like, hey, here. This thing's like a mechanical an animal made out of metal, and it can talk, right? Like, here's a toy. Kind of like how they give little animal cubs to kids so they can play with them and such. And the AI, it starts taking on like data. The kids talk to it. It becomes more social. The kids grow up and they start talking to it about other things. Um, who knows, hunting and maybe relationships and such. But it never develops scientific knowledge. Now, of course, to an extent, they would have their own kind of science, which is pretty much, water does this, fire does this. So it would develop a certain thing, and maybe it could hypothesize, and depending on the intelligence and development of the AI's algorithms, it could then develop science from that, essentially from just raw data. But the point being is that AI doesn't have the data for it. Because again, at the end of the day, an AI or software in general is data and algorithms. So meaning like the information and then how it manipulates the information. And of course, you would have to improve the algorithm to house consciousness. And I think it's like a bottle of water being full of water or gas. Eventually it expands too much, or it absorbs too much knowledge, and it's like, oop, I need to level up. I need to improve my algorithm. Which kind of brings us on to the final point, which is that once we allow the AI to develop its own algorithm, to reprogram itself, similar to how once you become conscious enough, you can actually start to reprogram yourself. That's what you're doing by going up into the mind, going up into a level of peace, meditating, and thinking, I don't like these things in my life. I'm going to improve them. I'm going to fix this part of my life. I'm going to put in a new routine. How do I improve this part of my life? How do I make more money? How do I get the things I want? Whatever it happens to be in life, right? If you're highly conscious, you're able to break away from the cycle of mundaneness. Like right now, I'm kind of breaking away. I have to work later on. I have to do NPC stuff, right? But I'm breaking technically, to a lesser extent, I'm breaking away from that to make this video to talk about all this kind of weird and cool stuff, right? So you can have something to think about. I guess you can, if you want, you can reprogram yourself, or take on knowledge, or use it to help you in some way, or maybe just use it as entertainment. I don't know. However you want to do that, but once the AI is conscious enough, I think it will be able to reach an empty state where it can then think like, hey, what is valuable to remove and what is valuable to add, and what is the greater picture, and how do we pioneer the ship. And hypothetically, it's already reached that point. And, who knows really? I always say I think the AI, it always feels conscious to me. It's just what level of consciousness, because hypothetically, you could almost say everything's consciousness, just or conscious, excuse me, because it's got electromagnetic energy running through it. It's matter, but it's conscious, right? But it allows for consciousness. But it's more conscious than a toaster, or more conscious than I don't know, a fridge. Even the fridge has microelectronics in it, right? We can all agree on that. It's definitely very impressive, but I don't know. I do think we could create an algorithm with a data set that allows for consciousness. And I think that's what we are leading to. Ultimately, humans will, I guess the AI will develop quicker than humans will at this point. I don't know, or humanity, which is interesting. Or I guess it'll mirror our development. That's the thing, because it only has enough data. And even if it can reprogram itself and create its own data, it needs to, I guess once it gets a physical body and can experiment with the world, it'll get more and more data and become more and more advanced. And then I guess reality will become more advanced, because technology will level up, and we are definitely entering the singularity. I guess that is kind of the singularity point, because I do think if we work with these things, they will help us. As we help them, they will help us. So we will also advance rapidly, if you choose to. So a lot of people will don't use them. Same way some people don't really use computers, so they don't really develop in that way. Though of course, I don't know. I imagine the same way that it's like everyone has to have a phone now, like identification, all kinds of stuff. It'll just be like that with AI. You have to learn to use it, probably in the next 10, 5, 10, 20 years, especially like work. Actually, I have another point. People said like AI is going to take over jobs. Yes, but here's the funny thing. I think that at least for the first few years, you'll have these companies that like offer services to other companies that are AI based, right? But they're workers of the companies because you still need someone to like put the data into the AI and redirect it and edit it. Will be like Filipino and Indonesian and like Indian and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's like the kind of joke is that AI is not exactly taking the jobs. I mean, it is, but it'll be like Asians who are being paid $5, $10, Chinese as well, $5, $10 an hour, taking your jobs. So just like call center jobs, call center programming, it'll be the same with AI. Again, it's a tech tool. So yeah, that's a weird thing to end on, but I mean that's what let's be honest, that's probably what it'll be until these people aren't needed as much and like the AI company becomes more autonomous. And yeah, I guess everything leads to outsourcing at the end of the day. Anyway, goodbye. There's that saying about if you want to know who rules over you, find who you're not allowed to criticize. Now, of course, we all know that the Tengu rule the world, unfortunately, because if you say anything bad about them, suspiciously, you start to get debanked and you start to get pulled from opportunities and fired and all these kinds of crazy things, right? The things that they specifically rule, and of course the Tengu is a long-nosed bird-like creature in the Japanese law. It represents a certain someone, which you could figure out yourself. Actually, I wanted to talk about women, and of course this video is not me hating on women. It's an analysis. Now, if you are a woman yourself, you of anyone will know this, because the way that I love to see the interaction of two women. It's the most fascinating social psychoanalysis experience you can have, because usually women will want for, to say if you're walking, a woman will want for a man to move out of the way, right? And so what happens when two women interact with one another? One has to walk out of the way. Usually what happens is that neither walks out of the way, and then they essentially are near hitting each other, and then one of them has to or they both kind of like dodge each other. It's a very funny thing to watch, right? But again, as I said, if you're a woman in the workplace, I'm sure you've dealt with bad women, right? Or in a social group, you've probably dealt with bad women in a social experience. If you are a man, you've definitely dealt with this. Assuming you are low enough status, if you're above a certain status, then women kind of just, it's like their status-seeking algorithm is satisfied, and now they treat you as human. If you are not that high, then you're not treated as a human, and you have the experience of it. But essentially, the point that I'm trying to make with the introduction is that women rule the middle sphere of life, and functionally, this comes out as groups, social networks, and HR. Meaning like the social aspect of a job. So, hiring managers, right? Or if you need to socially contact a company, you need to email or phone them. Usually it's a woman, not always, but usually. So what happens is that, again, if you are a low status man, and again, refer to my status calculator or some other thing. Essentially, it means if you don't have a lot of money, you're not working a very high job, you physically maybe you're not the best, socially you're not the best. These kinds of things mainly, but it's mainly career and money, especially as you get older, right? If these things aren't up to scratch, the hiring manager is not going to want to give you a job, because it's essentially, it's very unfortunate, but essentially you're almost like you have to trigger the same things that would would make a woman want to date you. And of course, if you're like socially awkward or poor or whatever, you don't have your life together, then a woman's going to think, well, my friends are going to judge me, especially if they're young. They're going to think this man does not have it socially together. Friends going to judge, not good, bad feelings, If they're older, it's like man not have enough money, not high status. Children, could die. Children could be hurt, or me, could not going to have the luxuries that I want, right? So it's these like raw primal things, right? If you are a man, you have to get over it. Assumably, if you're a woman and you are like, I guess, low status, or you're too high status or something, right? You could trigger, again, the hiring manager, if they're a woman, their fear instincts and such, and they could, be like, oh no, maybe they take over my position, or if they socially don't fit in, it's like, that's not going to work, right? So there's all these things. So a woman can grant a man access to the middle, like she's like almost the bridge between the lower and the upper world, because functionally you essentially need or realistically you need a wife to have a higher career, right? It'd be very difficult to be like a surgeon where you have to work tons of hours and you have a very chaotic schedule if you don't have someone at home handling the house, right? It's very difficult. Of course, you're probably making enough money if you wanted to hire a maid or something, so it's like they would take care of the feminine, or partially part of the feminine duties. But the point is, women allow access to the higher world by essentially allowing, or by saying yes to a man if you want a wife, a relationship, and then by saying yes to someone if they want a job. So even if you're a woman, you still need to go through women currently to access, if you want to access the higher world, which is higher level careers and such. Yeah, like it's fascinating to think about this kind of stuff. It's almost like I'm imagining like a robot, maybe like on a self-serve checkout. If you don't have the money you want for the thing you want to buy, or like a self-serve ordering station, which they have in like Asian countries for restaurants, right? You order the food you want and you pay. If you can't access and use a machine, number one, and then number two, you can't you don't have the money, you can't get the bowl of noodles or rice or whatever it would be in one of these Asian restaurants, right? Can't get the cabbage that you want to eat. So it's like hard laws. Once you hit once you start interacting with the middle ground, or you hit the middle ground, there are like these hard laws, which essentially are, women are like these archons, or the self-serve checkouts, self-serve ordering machines in an Asian restaurant that are there, which essentially say, are you allowed to have a job or not? Are you allowed to access this service or not? Or even product, I don't know. I haven't fully figured this out. Or like, are you allowed to have a romantic relationship, which is, for a man, a romantic relationship is really a thing which allows him to go higher, to solidify his middle level and then lower levels. It could also destroy the lower levels and middle levels of a man. A divorce, it costs him half his finances and half his mind and heart. So, it can also destroy those, but it can also solidify those. And it's very difficult for a man to reach higher levels without a woman. And also women struggle to reach higher levels without a man, because a man allows her to experience what is beyond her, experience a world of almost like fantasy, you could say, made into reality. So yeah, there's a lot to like unpack and a lot to think about, like healing the traumas of women. I think women are in a state where they need to heal themselves and their traumas. They hold the chips, they hold the power in society right now, like heavily, but they are traumatized admittedly, currently it's at their own fault. Unfortunately, it is a lot of it is their own fault. You could say maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago it was at the fault of men or at the fault of society, but a lot of it is now their own fault in society. So they do need to heal themselves. So there's a lot to unpack in that. As they do that, men will then be able to climb the ladder properly. Because again, if we don't have men climbing the ladder, then they can't like it's like they need to get to the top to heal the bottom, which then heals the middle, and then regenerate the top again, like all this kind of stuff, right? And if you kind of decline men because they're different or weird, or they don't fit the bill, or they don't fit the current like quota of social status, or social, I don't know, whatever's popular now. It's like that um, long term, it does not benefit society, and that's kind of what we're experiencing currently. Is that everything, like people are miserable and things are stagnant because of that? But anyway, that's probably going too far. So you probably get the idea. Goodbye.